So when we talk about why don't we have perplexity, I don't think there is any point in replicating what's out there. There's no point in training yet another large language model. With AI, it seems like if we don't put artificial restrictions, cost of just literally even those things would go down.
So compute is the new currency.
I think efficiency is the new currency.
With AI, we are automating automation itself.
Sam Altman also recently mentioned there'll be like one founder companies coming up with 10,000 GPUs.
There's a lot of communities of startup founders who are trying to leverage AI from an application or commercial perspective, but not enough communities where people who just love AI for its own sake. So I'm trying to recreate an atmosphere of an AI lab.
Do you think it will be ever possible to objectively measure creativity?
You can think about creativity as like how we respond to jokes.
Can India really build AGI?
So we're really excited to be joined by Paras Chopra and Amit Rajanayak, our editor-in-chief and AI human. We all know Paras for successfully bootstrapping Wingify, your tweets on tech, and your wonderful writings on inverted passion. But besides all of these, who is Paras Chopra and what are you doing these days?
Great question. I think I see myself as a curious kid left in the playground with just so many things to discover. So yeah, sometimes I'm digging dirt to find worms, other days I'm in the leaves to find butterflies. So it's really about that, just chasing, one rabbit hole after another.
So you did raise a very curious question today morning on X. So how do you speculate a world where AI is doing all sorts of jobs and the economic value by humans is close to zero?
It's something which is, I think, two sides to the same question, right? Like one is where I'm confident that costs of everything will go down dramatically. Historically, technology has had a very sort of democratization effect. Earlier, TVs would be such a rarity. Now it's just common, and same with everything else. With prosperity, costs do go down, except for a few categories like, let's say, land and housing or healthcare. But with AI, it seems like if we don't put artificial restrictions, cost of just literally even those things would go down. For example, nothing's preventing us with more efficient layouts of cities where we can just build very tall buildings. So even housing has a possibility for it to be very, very affordable. So if everything is super affordable, which means I don't expect living standards to go down necessarily, but at the same time, it means because technology is doing most of this work, people not having enough, just, I think more than money, it's probably like a crisis of meaning that I'm anticipating. But again, it's an open question. Some people feel that we'll be writing poems or making songs, but I think we humans want to be valued, to feel meaning in our life, and that thing probably is at risk with AI and automation.
So compute is the new currency.
I think efficiency is the new currency, if I'm not wrong.
It has always been the new currency ever since we invented the steam engine and industrial revolution. Just that the pace of acceleration is just picked up dramatically. With AI, we are automating automation itself. Essentially, you have now models that can write code, and people at the very frontier edge are building models that can do automated AI and machine learning research. So if you're automating automation itself, then efficiency is just picking up exponentially.
I think very interesting thing. I think Sam Altman also recently mentioned that going forward, there'll be like one founder companies coming up with 10,000 GPUs. You can build $1 billion company. So what are your thoughts on that? And I think, again, always coming back to your tweets on X, right? So you spoke about Chat-GPT being the co-founder. So I think that is a new reality that we are waking up right now, and that's just like our extended brain. So what are your thoughts on that?
I have a white monitor.
Okay.
I bought as soon as Claude came along, where half of the white monitor is occupied by Claude and half with anything else I'm doing.
Okay.
It's just a persistent sparring partner. Everything goes to Claude and comes back to me in a slightly modified, curious fashion. And I've observed my productivity going up 10x. what would take a month takes less than a week, what would take a week takes a day, what takes a day. Sometimes I wake up and, before just even taking a shower, I'm able to write a very simple script, run that script, get results, and build a better intuition. This would have taken easily a week before, where you would have to go to documentation. And so I think slowly and steadily it's seeping into people's understanding of how big a change it is, on what leverage does it provide to a single individual. So I don't think it's sort of any doubt. There's no doubt that a single person would be able to build like $1 billion company.
Got it.
When you have automation that's so good, then there is no reason to doubt that will happen, right? Even pre-AI, we had WhatsApp as a company with 19 engineers selling for, I don't know, $20 billion or more. And the trend is going to accelerate.
And what are your thoughts on the complete, passion economy that is growing, right? So I think Turing Dreams is kind of creating that passion economy as well. Where I mean, it's amazing that you're taking this initiative where a developer or an engineer just can come here and do their things without any worry about the infrastructure and all of that. So in my head, the thought process of when I saw Turing Dream, right? So I just imagine how cult fitness was started. So they just started a gym where all the fitness enthusiasts want to build muscle, train. They used to come there and do that. And you have Third Wave Coffee for all the startup and the VC founders.
Yeah.
A go-to place for them to do. So is Turing Dreams kind of a similar initiative that is started by you here for attracting all the like-minded people, building actually for India?
Yeah.
And also I see a stark difference, it clearly mentions that Turing Dreams is not for someone who's looking for co-founder or a person who's building wrapper, but something that is they're into coding and building from scratch.
Yeah.
So what are you trying to do here?
Yeah, so this is a space for people who really are interested in getting deep into AI at a very technical or research level. I think there's a lot of communities of startup founders who are trying to leverage AI from an application or commercial perspective, but not enough communities where people who just love AI for its own sake. Because outside of academic labs, let's say at Indian Institute of Science or IIT, or outside of commercial AI labs like Anthropic or OpenAI, there's not enough spaces where people who just love different ideas about AI can come together and discuss. So I'm trying to recreate an atmosphere of an AI lab. I was trying to imagine what sort of conversations would be going at, let's say, OpenAI and Anthropic, and can we create an atmosphere where similar conversations happen, but with independent folks, that you don't have to be necessarily affiliated with an institute. So this space is where people come together and ask. So one of the requirements is if you would work on AI, even if you are not getting paid or had any expectation of commercial outcome. So if you are that kind of person who gets excited about understanding why does self-attention work the way it does, this is the right place for it. Because there's some magic in, matrices being multiplied in GPUs and outcomes intelligence.
Correct.
It's just so absurd. Nobody could have thought that you can multiply numbers and outcomes, what's happening under the hood. So at the deepest level, I think this is the question that drives me and a lot of people who are at Turing Dream right now.
Amazing. Because I remember we were just talking to Mohandas Pai in one of our conferences. He said India doesn't have a Mistral or Perplexity and all of that. So that's a different conversation. So will we see? I think you're in the second cohort running, and third is starting in Jan. So what are some of the amazing projects that you have seen that has the potential to become something like that? I'm not talking in terms of larger picture, in terms of something that is favorite to yourself, and you also build some amazing project yourself here. So we can discuss about that. And the hunger, I think we were just talking about, it has all food names so I was curious to understand. In the West, it's all about strawberry, and you have llama, all animal, and you have in the Middle East you have falcon, and in the Far East you have all dragons. And so what is the what are some of your favorite projects that you come across, and the kind of people that come here, like what are they like?
So I'll take a step back and talk
Yeah.
about really the philosophy of projects. I think we
Correct.
can think about projects in two ways. One is really catching up to where the West and China is. Now, I think I'll
Correct.
club these two. Maybe
Got it.
China is even ahead of West in a couple of ways. So when we talk about
Correct.
why don't we have Perplexity,
Correct.
why don't we
Yeah.
have Mistral, I don't think there is any point in replicating what's out there.
Makes sense.
And there's no point in training yet another large language model if there's just so many high quality open source language models there. Because I mean, training similar models and catching up, I think it's a function of investment. Literally, if you go to Hugging Face, they have a program where you can train your custom 7 billion, 13 billion model if you're willing to pay, let's say, $500K or $1 million. It's just a function of investing money because the recipes have been figured out. People know, what kind of model it is, what kind of data it is. So we need to ask ourselves, are we really trying to catch up and replicate what's there, or we're trying to build something which is very unique and different? So next Perplexity won't be a Perplexity, right? It will be something else.
Yeah.
And I think that's what drives me, the latter philosophy, and a lot of other people. I think replications are great and a lot of replications are happening, but true value gets created when you build something new that doesn't exist. So a lot of the projects that I'm doing, for example, Blueberry, Tofu, I mean, I just like to name them with things. They are immediately not at, let's say, what product can I build, but immediately at a level of what's really going on in these models. For example, I'm personally very interested in the creativity question of how can you have AI models be creative, and what does creativity even mean? Because most of the models end up just more or less replicating patterns that you find in the training set. So when we think models are intelligent, models are creative, we are mostly reflecting their training data set, which is the entire internet for most of these models. But if we have to really go beyond that, just like humans, we are able to very creatively combine inputs to come up with something new, right? Let's say in art movement, we were able to come up with Cubist Picasso, which is not a simple interpolation of what came before. It was a genuine step up from whatever had come before. And similarly, theory of relativity was a genuine new thing versus Newton's theory. So we need to ask, can current models come up with theory of relativity if all you had data was for Newton's laws of motions? Current models can't. So what's really driving me is these questions. And similarly, a lot of people are being driven at Turing's Dream with such questions, because I do feel if you obsess about such questions, only then you're able to create something new.
So coming to the reasoning part, right? You mentioned how human think, how creativity works, right? So let's just take the readers in one direction. So I'm going to ask Paras, if nobody is somebody, who is everybody? So if imagine this is a prompt, I gave it to Paras, what would you say? So if I say nobody is somebody, who's everybody?
I mean, I would say, it's you're trying to be clever, and maybe there's a better question out there.
Yeah. So imagine the same question we asked the like a system or a LLM based chat or anything, right? So creativity, how we would say is, I would say, if nobody is somebody, everybody is anybody. And the level of abstraction of understanding that at a creative level, I can say anything.
Yeah.
So I can say even everything is Nobiverse.
Yeah.
It's like, it can go on, like that doesn't make sense or anything of that sort. But can LLM reason is another conversation that are happening. And I think a lot of developers are looking at data set that can actually add some value. And you have been I think we were discussing in the morning as well. So in terms of quality data that you feed, and that's you had tweeted about that.
You have mentioned that everyone's optimizing for compute and low latency, and data sets are quite a barrier. And you also mentioned LLMs should be asking the user, hey, provide me a data set that I'm not aware of. So I mean, like, is it somewhere, is OpenAI missing with things like these? Is it also a reason why you spoke about China also, right? The DeepSeek and Quen, they're already out there. No one is quite late to the party. Do you think OpenAI should explore along these lines in order to power themselves as the best frontier model?
Let's say open-endedness, for lack of a better word, is something which is highly underexplored right now. And open-endedness means, can you genuinely try to go outside your training distribution and maybe either collect new data, clarify what's happening, or even combine what you already know to new artifacts. Because human progress has always happened by combining things that we found interesting. But people, I mean, you think about how innovation happens, right? A single person obsesses about some weird area which everyone else ignores. But once they're able to stumble upon that discovery, everyone says, aha, that makes sense. So right now, the way we've trained LLMs is to output the most average answer that humans like. That's what RLHF literally does,
Correct.
where you are able to train your models to prefer what humans would like to know. And internally, the way they generate answers is also they combine the existing statistical distributions into outputting something which is highly likely. So if you say, what is the capital of France, they'll say Paris, because that's there on the internet much more than some random answer. So I think this works well for, let's say, factual questions, because on an average, internet has more correct answers than wrong answers. But this doesn't work well when you're thinking about genuine innovation and creativity, because that by definition requires focusing on very low probability kind of ideas. Because if they were obvious, they would be just not innovation, right? So innovation only happens when you recognize two very low probability items, combine them together, and the combination seems very, very useful. So right now we're not training our LLMs like that at all, and I do feel that's the direction to go, because otherwise, where is the genuine novelty coming from?
Yeah.
I remember someone was talking about a research where they were trying to predict music styles by age, and the model was very good when it sort of do from 1900s to, let's say, 1950, 1960 classic rock and so on. I think after 2020 it starts producing gibberish because there's no data.
Got it.
I mean, the way to think about models is simply mimicking the data distributions out there, which means by definition, current models are incapable of genuine creativity. They might fool you for you to think that they are creative, because they might fetch something from the training data set. Because internet is so large, you might be surprised because you obviously haven't seen internet, but they are not doing genuine creativity. I think that's where probably a lot of frontier labs should go, and that's where I'm also focused on.
I've also seen a lot of benchmarks come out recently, right? For example, if I were to talk about the frontier math, so it said LLMs can only solve 2% of math problems. And you also have the ARC prize, right? So it's testing models where, it sort of mimics human general intelligence. So you speak about creativity. Do you think it will be ever possible to objectively measure creativity, in an LLM? Like, that open-endedness that you sort of speak about. So how do you measure it? Like, how do you quantify an LLM's capability?
Yeah, so I think that's an active area of research, but you can think about creativity as, like, let's say, how we respond to jokes. If I tell you an old joke that you've heard hundreds of times, you'll find it very boring. If I tell you like some random gibberish, it'll not make sense. But jokes work because there is an element of surprise, where before you are told the joke, right, it's a surprise for you. You don't know that. But after you told the joke, everything makes sense to you. So in that sense, I do feel in future we'll have techniques to be able to measure whether something is genuinely creative or gibberish. Because there is also trade-off between, they say there's a fine line between madness and genius. You can have LLM generate a lot of creative output, just increase the temperature to 2.
Correct.
It'll start producing gibberish. You can say it's creative, but it's not good. The whole issue is that how can you create something which is very low probability, but once you get exposed to it, everything else starts making sense. So I think it's possible to do so, but it's an open area of research. And you can also have proxy measures. For example, how many patents are being filed by, let's say, an AI. How many new startups are being founded by an AI? Whether AI is able to publish in top journals like Nature and Science. Once you have an AI author primary author in science or nature, you know that's a genuine novelty. These are very high bar for acceptance, and AI publishing in top conferences, top science is just very direct measure of creative output.
After Blueberry and Tofu, where you've measured, not measured, where you've experimented with LLMs with their diverse outputs and their reasoning capabilities. So, where is Paras's curiosity headed to next? What tasty meal are you headed towards?
I mean, it goes from ramen to coffee and everything else in between. But broadly, like I said, I think I'm very interested in two aspects: reasoning and creativity. So generally, I feel for any kind of artificial general intelligence, you need both, and both go hand in hand. I mean, you can't be creative without having very high reasoning capabilities, and for reasoning, you need creativity as well. For solving genuinely difficult problems, you do need insights that a lot of top mathematicians are able to have, which is not just from your textbook style of thinking. They are able to have insights which are very orthogonal to how most people are able to think. So how can we have systems who are able to combine creativity and reasoning? It's a very big project, obviously. So that's why I'm also excited, because it can consume a lot of my obsessions about it. But it's also not one thing. It's not like this one trick you'll be able to do and it will solve everything. I think it's like almost 50 projects within this broad bucket that are going to unfold.
Yeah, so I think Mustafa Suleiman, recent event in Bangalore, he said that researchers have sort of neglected the delivery vehicle of the LLMs, right? So it just seems like a technical article that you're reading out. So when an LLM is sort of responding to you, so how important is emotion, in an AI's output going to be in the future? But on the flip side, we've also seen OpenAI issue a warning that people are getting too attached. People may get too attached to the advanced voice mode. We've also seen a very tragic incident with character AI. So you speak about open-endedness. You speak about LLMs have to behave better creatively. But how do you evaluate that risk, right, without going too deep?
Yeah, I think it's a question of ethics. I mean, regarding EQ, AI systems optimize for whatever you want them to optimize for.
Right.
So, like you yourself said, character AI optimizes for having a relationship with their users.
Right.
So their models are able to do that. OpenAI optimizes for factual information in their Chat-GPT, so they're able to do so. So I don't think it's a question about models having or not having emotional question. It's about what you are optimizing them for. And because models can be optimized for any outcome you want to, I think the question of ethics becomes very, very important. Like the character AI saga really told about. And unfortunately, I feel engineers are not trained to think deep about ethics. Neither I found them inclined to think about ethics. And I can personally also feel sometimes the technology feels so exciting, the ideas seem so exciting, that the question of how it would impact others out there, that isn't the most obvious one that pops up in the head. But it's extremely important to think about, the tools that you're building, how they'll end up impacting the society. I mean, we all know Oppenheimer, how he ended up regretting his association. Even Albert Einstein ended up regretting contributing even in indirect way. He did so indirectly, but the whole Manhattan Project people were very sort of regretful about that. I don't see those conversations happening much more frequently. I mean, there's a lot of AI doomerism where people feel that we'll all get extinct, or there is things regarding, let's say, jobs. And these are, say, valid conversations, but I think there's a middle ground in terms of how everyday models are impacting everyday people in different ways. We need to have more conversations about it. And I think the responsibility is on engineers, because they are the ultimately, ones shaping up these tools.
Right. So when you speak to developers, like you mentioned, so they are in the race to ship intelligence as much faster as possible. So I think, and when you talk to a normal person who has no idea what they're creating, so they have a sense of understanding. They talk about responsible AI, ethics, privacy, and all of that. So this is normal. Like there's like a balance that is happening. But I think somewhere intelligence is faster than any of these things. Like we see with OpenAI as well, right? So I think they came up with O1. Now it has that reasoning capabilities where it is kind of simulating that environment of creating those synthetic data set, and then again it comes to the scaling laws, right? So what are your thoughts on, I mean, you're wearing a shirt on Transformer. So I just want to understand, like, a lot of conversations are happening in terms of how LLMs have hit a wall, and scaling laws. How long can you scale these kind of models? How when will you keep training them, and then you build a simulated environment or a thing about predicting what is going to happen? So a lot of research is happening in that area, and at the same time, when you look at humans, how we are processing information and everything, we do not need that much of training per se, right? So a person of high level consciousness or who has reached that doesn't require that much of training. So limited data set, limited training, and we are engaging with that. Do we need models that needs to be trained so much, and so much GPUs, so much thing to get to that intelligence of artificial general intelligence or super intelligence that people are talking?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on scaling laws? Has it hit a wall? What is your opinion on that?
Yeah. I think AI disagree that humans didn't require so much of compute.
Correct.
I think to get to human levels, evolution took trillions of experiments over 4 billion years after Earth formed. So if you think it in terms of amount of flops or compute, I think it'll be far greater than, I don't know how millions of magnitude higher than what the amount of compute we've invested in coming up with the model. So humans did not just arrive right on the get-go.
Correct.
I think there has been a lot of scalable experiments that evolution did, right from single cell to multicellular to the whole trajectory of dinosaurs, mammals, and finally primate family, and then we came about. So we are a result of all that compute being invested in terms of searching for human level of intelligence. And I think if anything else, I think I'm surprised that we've been able to build things like LLMs with relatively small amount of compute. So that's comment number one. And I think comment number two also is about, I think the scaling of LLMs per se doesn't matter. Ultimately, an AGI system, it'll be a collection of just so many things that LLMs will become things like we use databases today, right? So it'll be just one part of it. So what matters is whether the entire system, we are confident that it will scale or not. Because even right now, I mean, after O1 has come about, I have not found use for it because its intelligence is just at a level where I don't encounter the use of it in day-to-day. Claude Sonnet is good enough for me. GPT-4o is good enough for most of the people. So these kinds of really advanced intelligence capabilities, I think they are probably blocked on some other aspects. Let's say whether in what context we can even utilize them.
Correct.
What's the cost of these things and so on. So I do feel when Sam Altman said we'll saturate all the benchmarks next year, I think that will happen.
Got it.
And because benchmarks are close to getting saturated, and that's a very, very big deal. But when we talk about AGI, my definition of AGI is that can you have a system that's able to adapt to new situations in a very sample efficient and resource efficient manner? It closely aligns with, let's say, what ARC-AGI price is all about. I think we'll get there because other scaling laws will pick up, right? The whole test time inference, test time training, and many other techniques like evolutionary techniques are still underexplored. The fact that now these systems can generate the synthetic data. I think there's so many ideas out there.
Yeah.
Even if LLMs stop scaling, the whole system has just many ideas just waiting to be integrated.
Correct. I think there are a lot of underrated models that are there, like causal models, and a lot of people are experimenting. I think there's another, which one, the neurosymbolic AI, which deep. So each big tech is talking about these kind of things, and former Google CEO also mentioned that next maybe 6 to 12 months is a very critical window for people who are going to achieve that kind of intelligence and then ship it to the public and all of that. That is a different story. But who is not building AGI, right? So they'll be left behind. So it's the kind of conversation that is happening. Like companies that have built first or have those capabilities already there sorted, the rest of the people won't be able to catch up.
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think there's just so many models out there in open source, and the ideas are floating up in the air.
Got
I
it.
mean, you had DeepSeek replicate
Oh yeah, that's
O1's capability
I,
in 2 months.
yeah,
So
yeah. So,
that level of
all right.
just, I mean, there is truly no moat. And in that sense, I don't think anybody will own AGI per se.
Makes sense.
It will be available for everyone, and it should be available for everyone.
Got it.
I mean, what will be limited is GPU, the GPU and compute. And when we are making NVIDIA richer, and that's fine. But in terms of I think we have to realize the intelligence is not so much in models. It's more in the training data
Correct.
that goes into the models. All architectures and most models end up just converging to similar kind of performance. That's why we see people just get to the same benchmarks and people talking about there is no moat. So if there is not a lot of secret sauce in models,
Correct.
then training data is the king. And if it's internet with synthetic data, like where is the moat coming from?
So there was also a research recently that LLMs reflect the ideology of the creator. So you mentioned that, I mean, it's out there like Claude 3.5 and OpenAI So-1 or GPT-4. It's all equally powerful. So do you think the conversation needs to shift from who is building the LLM, right? So we've also seen a lot of open source models from China out there that are really powerful. You know, you have people like Vinod Khosla who's like really paranoid about, you know, what countries like China can do. So do you think the conversation needs to shift from who is building the model when there's a level playing field in AI models in the future?
I think that bias has been always true in all the products. I mean, even media companies are being associated as left and right.
Correct.
So all products end up imbibing biases of their creators. So I think the question is much larger in terms of what do we as humans want. I don't think we'll ever have a model that's non-biased, because non-biased model is just this monster replica of internet where you have everything from 4chan to WikiHow. You have to somehow, constrict it to say something that you find of value. And different people will constrict such raw models in very different ways. But I do think what's underexplored is interfaces for AI and humans. I think chat interface has been a relic of human to human communication, and we've adapted it for AI, but it's highly underexplored on what different ways should we be interacting with artificial intelligences. Agents are one thing, but the user experience of interaction with an LLM, that also needs a lot of thought. These models can be steered in different ways. We can give feedback to them in different ways. At test time, they can learn. So why are we just restricting them to a chat interface?
So what other interfaces would you explore? I think at Wingify also you have explored a lot of user experiences with A/B testing and all of that. So that is one question. And coming to UX design, right? You mentioned, so there's a lot of UX designers out there who are fearing that a lot of initial prototypes are going to be done by AI. And now you also mentioned that chat interface may not be the best for everybody. So does the conversation for UX designers need to shift from, okay, there's a massive opportunity out there to explore more interfaces, or do you think that the fear of automation is something that...
No, I think there's always an opportunity. I mean, ultimately, value gets created when you make things more efficient for people. Amazon worked because you make things efficient from going to a bookstore to ordering in online. Uber made things more efficient. So a lot of value gets created when you make things simple for people. And if you think even things like apps like Instagram, you can call them as interfaces. They were literally interfaces, but they did something new versus just the camera or just a photo gallery. So there is a significant opportunity in reimagining how we do shopping, how we do travel, how we gather information. The whole rise of perplexity is just user experience. It's an LLM combined with search results in a creative way. So instead of fearing that automation and AI will take my job, how about we reframe the question on what's possible now that wasn't possible before? Now we have just such once in a lifetime technology, almost at maybe even bigger scale than electricity and engine. How can you use this an amazing new technology to drive a lot of new value? and that requires creativity. So as long as AIs don't have creativity, there's just a ton of opportunity. After that, who knows? I don't know. But until then, it's just a lot of opportunity to drive a lot of value.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, I think the voice feature also is like how we are talking right now, right? So there's a lot of other UI UX that uh, I mean, it can be explored, like exactly like how we are talking, and like
The notebook LM.
notebook LM,
Yeah.
and a lot of, I think that was a very valid point. Like there is a lot of value to be created, right? So that is something excited about. And Paras, like, just want to know, like, what is like this is the best time to be alive, according to me, and the 60s, obviously, because of the music and the classic rock thing. So how do you envision future, right? So the one question that we were asking is, everybody's talking about AGI, everybody's in the West, at least, like people are only talking about this, like the strawberry and all of that. Do you think, like, I mean, I know as an Indian, I should not be asking this, like, can India really build AGI? So a few months back, last year, the conversation was when Sam Altman came, they said, can India really build AI with, 10 million foundation model? And that conversation is kindly shifting. And now I think we need to ask, like, can we build such capabilities here from India? And you have built SaaS yourself, and I want to know, like, how has SaaS evolved with AI agents coming into picture? And you also said some of the creation here can be like a value creation for different business and evolving over a period of time. And we keep writing stories around how SaaS has evolved from service. What is that? Software as a service to service as software. So, what are some of the changes that you are seeing, having run businesses successfully over the years? Uh, what is that time for you right now that you see, and do you even think about future long term? What do you want to achieve?
The way I think about it, opportunity always lies in confusion.
Oh,
When there are playbooks out there and
Correct.
people are talking about stuff,
Correct.
then probably the boat has sailed a little bit. So by confusion, I mean, say in SaaS, right? When I was building
Correct.
in 2010,
Correct.
nobody had the formula for how to build SaaS.
Correct.
There was no conference on SaaS in India, no playbook. Nobody
Correct.
was talking. I didn't even know the word SaaS until much later.
Okay.
So I was just doing what felt right to me. But now, if you think about SaaS, it's just super formula driven. You know how many salespeople you have to hire, what's the CPA to CAC to LTV ratio, and all those things. So when the playbooks become more concrete, you should know that those playbooks become concrete for everyone.
Correct.
And the edge disappears. So when we talk about, let's say, I was talking about foundation models, there's no point in training a foundation model.
Correct.
Let's see, why would you want to replicate Llama 8
Correct.
billion or even 70 billion unless you have like a very special case or a training data set that wasn't there?
Correct.
So if that playbook has materialized for training LLMs, there's no edge there.
Correct.
So my sense is about embracing confusion and what people are exploring at the edge, what people don't know. Only by chasing those threads, I think we can get to somewhere different and better than versus trying to do head-to-head competition. I think head-to-head competition is never a good idea.
Okay.
There is this whole idea of comparative advantage where people in countries end up specializing. I mean, specialization exists for a reason. India was big on services industry because that's the wave we ended up catching. So in that sense, again, coming back to your question, I would urge us to think about, I mean, India can definitely do a lot of great stuff. The history says most of the tech companies, big tech companies in India have, US have India CEOs. Attention paper had Indian co-authors,
Yeah,
so
sure.
Indians are doing amazing stuff there. So there's just no reason to think why we can't do similar amazing things in India. But we have to shift the narrative from can we catch up to US and China to what new and different things can we do which can drive a lot of value. So we have to just think independently instead of having the conversation of whether we can catch up to SF on China, because
Makes
that's never
sense.
going to happen.
That's true. And I feel like if Indians can build amazing AI systems abroad, including GPT-4o, right? It was, I think, it was built by Paras. No, there's a guy from India who's in the complaint. I forgot his name. So it is built by Indians. If Indians, what I was trying to say is, if Indians are able to build better AI systems, what are those AI models or systems can do for the world, right? So it's crazy. So I mean, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, very bullish on
Yeah.
Indians.
Yeah.
We are 1.5 billion of us, so
Of
we can
us.
do whatever we set our sights on.
So Amit did mention about SaaS. So AI and LLMs, they're all going big on software, and they're all talking about AGI in the broader sense. So have somewhere investors and researchers neglected specific aspects like applying AI in traditional engineering, right? Material discovery, construction, or like let's say the ease at which you can find an economically viable construction material that can probably solve the housing crisis in India, right? You can just build homes for poor people. So do you think researchers, the conversation should shift towards that, building AI for traditional engineering and highly specific use cases than just broadly throwing the term AGI around? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think obviously much more value will be created by applying whatever models and techniques we have to very specific domains. There is this, because as I was saying before, value gets created when you solve inefficiencies. If you can bring the cost of some housing material to 50%, suddenly you've made houses cheaper. So there is a ton of opportunity in looking at multiple areas and trying to squeeze efficiencies out of it. The difficulty with that is to do that, you have to be good at the domain knowledge.
Yeah.
You have to be good at AI, but also have to be good at value creation principles. And having these three things together in the same person is just very difficult. Some people are great at domain knowledge, but they have no idea about what AI can do. And even if you have both two things, I think the third thing of thinking like an entrepreneur is also very important, because you can solve either problems that bring a lot of value or problems that bring no value at all. How can you identify these two apart is also some skill that you develop once you just try to do a number of new things and see what the market says.
Oh yeah, so I mean, I was surprised. Like, what goes on in your mind? Like, how do you get these new curious ideas? I mean, I know you've been asked multiple times about this. Just want to know, like, what keeps you curious, or what keeps you going? Where do you get these thoughts? And I see it in tweets. And at the same time, like even I go in that thought. So thought has that influence on people, and all of that. So I'm like little curious to understand your brain, how it works on a regular basis, and what keeps you going on a day-to-day basis. Like how do you think the way you think?
The fundamental mystery of why anything exists at all, I think everything stems from there.
Yeah.
I know we can go very philosophical, but it's absurd that we don't question this enough. Of there could have been nothing, but yet things exist. We could have been experiencing nothing, but I experience color, sound, see you. So where is this thing happening? Because all our science, consciousness is experiences nowhere. You will not find any equation where it will say suddenly pop up there's an experience. And similarly, we take universe for granted. So it just drives from there, where there's just so much of interesting structure into reality, and maybe there was a possibility reality could not have existed, yet it exists. So, and I'm part of it, so why not just try to go very deep into things. So it's just I think awe and mystery about reality that just drives me, and everything is an outcome of it.
So one objective question before we end, right? We have a lot of these questions going around. So according to you, the way you envision AGI, something creative, something open-ended, how long are we from it? Just a year, a number that you can say? Take it with a pinch of salt.
I think it'll happen eventually. And probably in my lifetime. Yeah, but I really don't know whether it's 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, because by definition breakthroughs are impossible to predict.
And your lifetime might be forever.
If you enter in the consciousness, I think it's there.
That I don't think so. I think people are overblowing the whole immortality, and I'm all up for living longer and fitter, but I think we are up against very hard physical and biological limits when we're talking about living forever. Even machines degrade, even the universe has a heat death. So I think we have, at least as technologists, we have a tendency to get super excited and super optimistic about things. I often come somewhere in the middle.
Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Paras. That was
Awesome.
wonderful
It was-
talking to you.
yeah,
And
wonderful
one
question.
one final message to all our readers. I understand, like, all of these AI conversations might sound overwhelming for someone who is not into the field and everything, right? So I have a perspective in terms of the more you understand about AI, right? The current it's called artificial narrow intelligence, which exists like particularly on particular task and all of that. And now we are moving towards general intelligence. So I feel the more, personally for me, the more I understand about AI, the more I understanding about humanity. So it's similar laws, similar techniques, the machine learning technique that are like, you have reinforcement learning, that again applicable here as well. So what is your final message to people in the profession? Where do you see the entire field growing in one sentence, or how we want to tell them, like, where should you head when you're starting from career in AI? There'll be a lot of beginners, because I encounter a lot of these kids, and I'm seeing this pure genuinely, right? So a lot of these school kids, like, I don't study computer science or maths, what should I? So all of these burning questions, and their conversation happening, a lot of fear mongering, and among other media forms that AI has taken over this many jobs, so cuts and all of that. So that fear mongering is for the views, and all of that are secondary. But innocent life is at those questions. They're asking, like, is my job safe, or do I have a career in? So a lot of journalists that I train, right? So they come with a clear blank slate, like, I don't understand AI. So I can't. So my simple answer is, the more you understand about AI, the more you understand about humanity yourself. So what is your philosophy that is tied to understanding or learning or being in this particular domain? Last 20 years you've been in this domain, so.
I mean, change has always been there. So I think the more you attach yourself to fundamentals, the better you are placed at. So instead of saying you should read this or that, my thing is that really become stronger internally. Know more about yourself. The more self-understanding you have, the more confidence you'll build, the less fearful you are, the better you'll be adapting. So when the change is accelerating, the best thing is to be very stable and sorted inside. You can't be chasing, one thing after another in a fearful mode. You have to, I think, I keep talking about it, but everyone has to see what makes them come alive.
Correct.
And do a lot of it, because what the world wants is not for people to do specific things. The world wants people to do what really makes them come fully alive and joyful, because that's what they'll do non-stop in a very passionate way, and that's where they'll feel fully attached to the world and feel very meaningful. So it's going a lot of inside and asking who they are, and if they're clear, I think there's nothing to fear.